Very good afternoon to you and a warm welcome if you're just joining us. This is Politics Unscripted, the segment of the show, the Editor's Choice. It's where we take a look at your Sunday papers, the stories captured on these papers. And to help me do this, we are joined in studio by News 24 political editor, that's Qaanitah, and Sowetan editor, Nwabisa Makunga, who joins us via the virtual platform. To both of you ladies, thank you very much for making the time. Can I start with a quick roundup of what your assessment is of the special votes period? It has now closed. Yesterday on this channel, we covered at least some polling stations where the presiding officer simply leaves with the ballot papers unaccompanied by a police escort. And the understanding is that by law, you're supposed to be accompanied. What's your sense thus far?
I think COVID-19 has definitely posed a challenge for this vote, and we saw it in the last 2 days in relation to party agents having space in voting stations, and a lot of other glitches in terms of some polling stations closing much earlier than 5 p.m., which was the time mandated by the IEC for polling stations to close. And you see this level of issues in different polling stations. The reality of it is that this is what democracy is about, for citizens to raise these issues with the IEC, to say, hey, go and find out what that manager of that VD, why this is happening, and so that they can stem these problems. Obviously, tomorrow you're going to see this, the snaking of the queues of people coming to vote, and I think these last 2 days were a test run. Obviously, the IEC has a lot on its plate.
Nwabisa, coming to you, the EFF already making suggestions that the IEC may have a lot to answer for, and that is not the first time that ballot boxes leave polling stations unaccompanied by a police escort. The integrity of the IEC here is also going to be very much under the spotlight.
Absolutely, absolutely, Xoli. I think, we've seen a lot of, perhaps not a lot, but we've seen a number of complaints so far that have come through. And fair enough, these are complaints that you always see, with every election. And they're really about, glitches perhaps at the beginning of the process in particular. But I think as far as the IEC itself, it's going to have to exercise a higher level of transparency, efficient communication, not just with political parties, but also with voters. It must do right, but also it must be seen to be doing right. And I think for me, perhaps we'll see later on in the press conference today how they respond to some of the issues that have been raised. But there have been a number of issues that have been raised. They're not unusual, however, they're still concerning. Yeah,
Qaanitah, let's come back to you. Let me talk to you about a story that piqued my interest in the Sunday papers, and it's actually from your house, or from your stable, if I could put it like that. The City Press, the headline, ANC targets clean sweep. This as South Africans prepare to cast their votes tomorrow. The governing party believes it will regain majorities in the metros. How?
I suppose they have to be optimistic, right? They've put up a strong campaign. I was just recalling before we went live now about how the president has worked so hard in these elections. I mean, if I were him, I'd be making unseemly demands on my party after these elections, because,
it's as if it was a general election.
It was as if it was a general elections. And I mean, if you saw the deputy president in Swane trying really, really hard. And what I found quite fascinating about this campaign is that the level of resistance, the level of despondency was very evident to them. So communities shared the disgruntlement, and it wasn't like before where the euphoria of that political party leader showing up, was enough to sort of put our differences aside. You saw so many occurrences where the president had to basically tell people, no, calm down. I mean, just on Friday, when the ANC rally, you've covered a million of these, Xoli. You know what a big moment it is. The ANC's, victory rally. This is, this is it, right? And then you saw in Soweto the amount of protests that were happening, the community completely disgruntled. And you saw in the Sunday Times today, they're talking about electricity, even the City Press as well, being such a big determiner in these elections. And you did not have the ANC finishing off on the level that it would have in the past, possibly. And I think at this point, it's wishful thinking.
Yeah. Nwabisa, your thoughts? I mean, the parties really tried to pull out all the stops, but I suppose the focus or perhaps the big interest might be on the ANC with minimal resources, dejected staff, and essentially, someone said not even a single advert on TV. Yes, they did run radio adverts, but not a single advert on TV. So a very poor ANC. Does that, let me actually put this question properly, because I suspect I'm going to be clumsy about it. Does this put any pressure on opposition parties to do well, given the state of the ANC?
It does. Naturally it would. I mean, I don't think any of the opposition parties would, look at the status quo as far as municipalities are concerned, as well as look at the party itself and think, we'll probably have this thing in the bag. I think, with all the challenges that the ANC has, I think brand ANC, in many communities is still strong. And one, of course, can argue about, what the reasons are for that. I think Qaanitah makes a good point about the president having shown up, particularly in these elections. And I think that's really perhaps from the fact that, the last local government election, the ANC was really hit hard, particularly in its constituencies, because people just did not show up to vote. And the reason why they didn't show up to vote was obviously because, there was a lot of issues, not just at local level, but in particular with the crisis of credibility of its national leadership at the time. So I think, a combination of those things, it really has put pressure on the ANC to step up its game, but also equally so has put pressure on the opposition parties to really show up as well to try and win votes.
There's one element, guys, about these elections that simply cannot be overlooked. And this time around, I think as described by Begicele, that political killings have not been as pronounced as what we saw in 2016. But nonetheless, they do seem to be on the rise. Some political parties have actually resorted to making the mayoral candidates simply go MIA so that they are not detected, so that they're safe, basically. Yeah. The NFP is one such party, for example. The safety around not just the candidates that are contesting the elections, but the voters themselves, guys. There's a polling station as we speak in Camperdown, KZN, where a local chief, because of the dispute I guess they have with the provincial government there, they're of the view that the community is not going to turn up until this issue around the traditional leadership is sorted. Those people are probably not going to go to that polling station because of fear.
Yeah. So there's two issues, Xoli. The first, is the political, the candidates and political killings. And I think that we have not seen any real consequences from 2016. So that's why it can happen unabated. And it's something that's just commonplace. So, someone asked the other day, as an ANC candidate for this elections, is it even worth it considering that your life is literally on the line? And you see it in other political parties too. But it talks to the desperation and what politics is in South Africa. This desperation for position, this infighting, this sort of everyone jostling to get their place on the ballot, and also just a job as a councillor.
It's to put food on the table.
Absolutely. And then the link, there's a very far link from your job as a councillor and the service to the people. And so what happens is this local government is really about the position and not so much the service that's going to come after November 1, where you have to then take on the challenges of the community and be their spokesperson in councils.
Yeah. Nwabisa, your thoughts on the safety aspect of the election? And I shudder to think, just the other day I was talking to young candidates, particularly from the ANC. They've fielded so many of those who are councillor candidates. And I said to them, but are you willing to risk it all? Really?
You see, that's exactly it. I mean, I must say, I was quite disturbed watching an interview with Police Minister Begicele recently, where he almost questioned, somebody was saying, we've seen these killings of party candidates, etc. And he said, well, what makes you say that they're on the rise? And he says, as far as our stats are concerned, you can't necessarily say that are on the rise. My issue with that is kind of really looking at whatever numbers that you're looking at as a police minister and basically saying, oh, well, the problem's not as bad as it is. And it actually is that. It is that. I mean, we've had people in some communities in Tswane, for example, who had to go into hiding because, they were fearing for their lives, and they had reasonable grounds to believe that they feared. And I think this whole violence, yes, it's not a new thing in the ANC or some other parties, for example, but it is concerning enough. And I think the question perhaps you posed to the candidates you were talking about, to say, are they willing to risk it all? I think it's really about the fact that, as you're saying, people are wanting to put food on the table. And some people, because of the lack of opportunities in South Africa, are actually seeing that perhaps the only other way to really get a job or to be sustainable is to enter that space. And people will do anything basically to survive in it.
Yeah. Guys, talk to me about stories that piqued your interest. We've been talking about stories that piqued my interest. There is one, though, Qaanitah, while you think about yours, that I would like for us to get into. It's in the City Press, and it's about the EFF and the kind of drama they've caused in the Eastern Cape, Abatembu. They've promised to buy King a car. They gave him a car. My question is, where do the monies come from for the EFF? I mean, they've had a very good election campaign this campaign season. I was talking to the treasurer just moments ago, by the way, who says, well, look, donations just seem to be trickling in now. So, yes, we had nothing to declare in the past period where we needed to declare, but now there's money coming in. And I said, where is it coming from? He says, no, but wait for us to declare. Where do they get the money?
Yeah, I think the EFF has really put up a compelling campaign, especially given the fact that they launched a national campaign, whereas parties like Action SA had very, targeted, campaign spend, like in Joburg or Itekwini, for example. So definitely, a lot of theatre, a lot of spectacle. You saw that final rally in Katlehong. I mean, that's Julius Malema at his A game, you know. And the thing is that given the situation or the sort of what we saw from the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, the self-immolation, they sort of eating up themselves on the campaign trail. I would...
Sorry to cut in. You remind me of the words of our past political analyst now, given that he works for government, Somato Dafige, and he says the DA is self-mutilating in a corner, unprovoked.
Unprovoked. But I mean, that's what we have seen on the campaign trail. That's exactly it. And so I think the EFF had that, and I mean, we're definitely going to scrutinize the political party declarations for at least this last 2 quarters when it does get declared, and that's an important part of the act. But the thing of buying that king,
how I don't know whether it's actually been delivered yet, because it's an ML. Nwabisa, do you know whether that car has been delivered or no? Go on.
It doesn't seem to have been delivered yet. It's still a promise.
So
I'm saying it doesn't seem to have been delivered yet. It's still a promise.
News 24 ran a story that actually Mercedes-Benz doesn't make MLs anymore, so they would have to choose from another luxury German sedan if they want to give the king a car for his endorsement in this elections.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see, as you saw, this bizarre type of electioneering. So Paul Mashatile giving out money in a church. I mean, you see this happening so much. And a story that piqued my interest, I think it's the City Press, about how state projects bolstered the ANC's campaign. It was a frenzy of delivery. I think about Mfuleni, where the municipality is completely run down. And then you saw Lebogang Maile, you saw David Makura, you saw so many government ministers, houses, trucks. Every type of government project that you could think of was launched in this last 2 weeks.
It's been associated to the campaign. Wow, interesting. Nwabisa, let's wrap it up. Your stories that piqued your interest. I've got one for you if you don't. It's the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng, he says, I'll do anything that God tells me. And apparently he wants to contest the 2024 elections.
He clearly has indicated that, that he would. To be fair, I think, it's not something that he's volunteered to say, okay, I want to do this, to put his hand up. But it seems he has been asked by people who, particularly from the church sort of community, who are saying, look, we need a credible leader, and would you be willing to do this? And he says, of course, if God wants him to do so, then he'll make himself available. And I think that's really kind of been his, his mantra with every, position that comes to him. He says, if God wants me to do so, then I'll put myself available. I don't know. Hey, let's see. It's going to be a very interesting election, national government election coming.
Guys, let me thank you very much for your time. Qaanitah Hunter, he is the political editor at News 24. Thanks indeed for making it to studio. Nwabisa Makunga is the editor of the Sowetan newspaper. Thank you very much for joining us for this important discussion. When we